You're here. Welcome to the Masterminding Success podcast. They say if you want to be successful in business and in life, then surround yourself with successful people. So pull up a seat. The mastermind is about to begin.
Hey, glad you could join us for another episode of the Masterminding Success podcast. We're your hosts, Keith Wheeler
and Nuria Corby.
And what are we talking about today, Nuria?
So today we're going to talk about why your books aren't selling. That's another great topic, I think.
Yeah.
And something many people ask me, why are my books not selling?
Yeah. And it can get frustrating. You spend, all your time and effort putting out this book, whether it's a written book or no or low content book, and you just hear crickets. It can be very disheartening and kind of let all the wind out of your sails, if you will. So there are things that I've found over the years. Obviously there's no one size fits all. There's no, one way where we can say, for certain, this is what's causing it. But after as many years as you and I have been doing this together, there's some things that we can say that probably the first things you want to look at first, the first culprits to kind of eliminate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's true. It's just not something that you can predict whether a book is going to sell or not. Sometimes they sell, sometimes they don't. And it is frustrating, especially, I don't know. I mean, I usually, when I publish a book, I don't expect too much. I kind of create it the best as I can. And then I think, okay, I'm going to put it out there. And it's almost like I'm testing the market with each book. So I don't really have very high expectations in that sense, because I know it could be a fantastic book and it might not sell.
Right.
So it's really hard to say, why is my book not selling? Because there could be so many reasons. But like you said, there are a few obvious reasons. And I think we're both going to say the same thing. First of all, the cover design. Second, the niche. Is this something people are looking for even? Because you can make a fantastic book, and if it's not something people are looking for, then no one's going to find it. And the other thing is, just having a really good content, having a good description matters as well, because I see books out there that have hardly any description or very confusing descriptions as well. So it's those three things really that come to my mind straight away. Then there's other things, people have to find your book. So what are your keywords like? What, are you advertising? Are you promoting? I think they are the main ones. Would you say the same?
Yeah, I would say the first thing I usually ask people right off the bat is, did you research your niche? Did you create a product because either out of necessity or did you create a product just because you wanted to, or was getting sales in the forefront of your mind? Did you do the research to make sure that before you spend any effort on the product, on the book, that there's an audience waiting to buy it? Many times that right there will stop people. They're like, no, I didn't. Well, I mean, if you didn't go into it, and that doesn't mean that if you didn't do that research, you can't still sell your book, and that you can't get sales. But the number one thing that I suggest to people, if they're doing this for a business, if they're doing this to make money, is research a niche that needs your book. And so that would be the first thing I would say. When it comes to covers, covers are a very delicate thing, because people could say, I spent $300 on a cover, or I've got this amazing cover, and you look at it and it's like, yes, that cover is amazing. But does that cover speak to that niche? For example, if you're in military science fiction, you better have either, a warship, war spaceship, or some, mech'd out, Marine on your cover, or it doesn't tell your audience that book is for that niche. So even though it's an amazing cover, if it doesn't have the tropes that are in other books, and we can argue whether tropes are good or not, till the cows come home. But the bottom line is people do judge a book by its cover because that's all they have to go by. Yeah. And so if it doesn't capture the audience and make the audience believe that it's something they might be interested in, they're not going to look at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those are the two top ones that I think of. And like I said, the number one, typically when people ask me this question, I ask, did you research your niche? And the answer is almost always no.
Yeah, and I think that I totally agree there. The niche and the research is really important, because a lot of people, especially when they first start, and especially with low content books, they tend to make things that other people have already made. Mm-hmm. They watch a YouTube video where somebody creates a coloring book, or a video where somebody creates a logbook, and then they make the same thing, because I think we've all done it as well. In our minds, we think, oh, well, they're teaching me how to make this particular book. This is what is required of me to make. And that is not the case necessarily. Usually when people show you how to make a book, it's an example of what you could make, and also to kind of show you how you could make a book, but make something different, make a different kind of book. Because like you said, I mean, unless you research your niche and unless it's something you know something about, you shouldn't make that particular book. You should make something completely different. Right. But it's easy for a beginner. I mean, I teach this myself. I say start with a notebook. If you're going to make low content books, that is the easiest way to start. So start with a notebook. But I'm not saying you're going to make a lot of sales by making a notebook. I'm just saying start with a notebook to practice how to make a book. Right. And then, making sales is a completely different thing. But once you've mastered the process of uploading a book, creating a book, selling it is a different thing. And the reason your book might not sell is exactly what you said. Your research might not have been done in a way that tells you this is the kind of book that I should be making. Covers, with covers, the other problem is that we all have different tastes, and what one person might think is a good cover, another person might not think it's a good cover. It's like if you tell 10 people to watch a particular film and you ask those 10 people what they thought, you get 10 different answers and 10 different, all of them feel differently about it. And I think book covers is similar, but you're right. There is an expectation of certain covers in certain niches. And if your book is too far away from that, that can have an impact as well. So you need to be niche specific. Is that the word I'm looking for? Niche, niche targeted.
And what I like to suggest to people, and I do this with my own books, is when I've got a cover, I will take it on screen and I'll bring it down to like a thumbnail size. Yeah. And then I'll go into my niche and I literally will take that thumbnail image and put it alongside the other books and say, does it fit in? Does it look like it fits in? Obviously you want it to stand out, but you want it to stand out in a good way. You don't want it to stand out in that it doesn't look like it belongs.
Yeah.
You want it to look like it belongs, but it still, pops better, draws more eyes to it. But again, it still looks like it fits in with the other books in that niche.
Yeah, that is actually a top tip, because I never used to do that. I used to bear in mind that it's going to be a thumbnail. And I used to design it in a way that I thought, yes, this will look good as a thumbnail. But when you said about actually taking that thumbnail and putting it against other books, I never did that before. And I actually did that not long ago. After you said it, I had to change one of my covers because it really, I thought, oh my God, he's right. It doesn't really look the way I thought it would look, so that is a top tip, definitely worth doing, because most people will look on their phones as well and buy books from their phones. So very important that your book cover looks good as a thumbnail. Definitely. Yeah. So thanks for that tip.
No problem. Another thing that I hear people say all the time when I ask them, okay, who's your book for? My book's for everyone. Well, if your book is for everyone, then it's for no one, because it's just going to get buried in with the millions of other books that are for, quote, everyone. You know, you need something that's going to speak to your target audience. It's not, you don't want some generic cover. You want something, or some generic interior. You want something that is going to make your buyer say, oh yeah, that's worth my money.
Yeah.
And I would rather my book be for 5,000 people in this really drilled down niche than 5 million people. And that's something that's really hard for people to kind of wrap their mind around. And it really just comes down to visibility, and competition. Do you want your book to be in competition with 5 million other books, or 5,000 other books? And it really, that's another area where I've seen people kind of shoot themselves in the foot, in that they've already created the book. One, they probably didn't do a deep enough research, or any research. They were like, oh, everybody loves word searches. Okay, first of all, not everybody loves word searches, but a lot of people do enjoy word searches. But what's your word search about? Are what the words that are in there? What are what theme is it around? And they just make them generic, because they figure, well, then it won't offend anybody. Everybody will be interested in it. And again, then it just gets buried in the millions of books that are out there. So That's another really good thing to look at is, ask yourself honestly, who's your book for?
Yeah.
And if your answer is, I don't know, or it's for everyone, then you really should do more niche research.
Yeah, absolutely.
And kind of find a way to drill that down. And obviously, if your book's already published, there's not really much more you can do about that. But if you haven't actually published it yet, ask yourself those questions. And the good thing is this is a business, and there's always the next book.
Absolutely. And that's actually, again, very true, because again, it's something that we kind of do at the beginning. I know I did it. You think, who's the book for? Well, I want it to be for everyone, because I want to attract as many people as possible to my book. And that's what we all think at the beginning. And we soon find out that doesn't really work, because you can't please everyone. You can't make your book. And also, it won't talk to somebody then. It won't get that person's attention. Whereas if you had an example, word search books, if you make a word search book for people that can't see very well, you make it in large letters, that appeals to that particular person or those particular people. They're more likely to buy that book than just pick one out of all the other ones. Or, if you speak to people, to a niche of people, or to a group of people, a smaller group, you have more chances of that book taking off than if you want to speak to everybody, because there's just too much to choose from for everybody. And then also, it doesn't make your book look like you are an expert on it, because if it's aimed at everybody, then anybody could make that kind of book. I don't know if that makes sense, but the way I've said it, but that's the psychology behind it. And the more you can be an expert on a particular subject, which means you're targeting a smaller group of people, then the better for your book and for your sales as well. So it's all things that you learn in time, because we all, like I said, I started like that. I tried to make books that appeal to everybody. I tried to, I didn't do the research the way I should have done. So all of that is so important. And you do learn that in time. So don't worry if your books aren't selling yet. Like Keith said, there's always another book. So, there's always time to tweak things and to change things. And that's what we've been doing, So the longer you do it, the more you know how to tweak things for you. Yeah. So, we've all done it.
And one thing that definitely should be mentioned is you're going to get books that don't sell. I have books that don't
yes.
sell. Nuri, I know we've discussed that before. Don't think that every single one of your books has to get sales. It's just not the way it works.
Yeah.
Now, what the tips we're giving are ways to better your chances for your business to get sales, I guess is a better way to put it. In as a whole. So getting back to what you were saying about, the niches and things like that. Another thing is that if you're drilled down and you're more specialized, into a topic, let's just say golf or whatever, and you now appear more like an expert, your business is an expert in that, then that not only does that better your chances of getting them to buy that one book, but getting those loyal customers who buy more of your books. If your book speaks to everyone, even if you get someone that's, happens to stumble upon your book and they're like, oh, okay, I'll buy this. If it's generic like that, what are the chances that they're going to buy your next one? Because yours just fits in with everybody else's. There's no difference between, your book and Nuria's book and my book. Then why would they pick yours again? You got that lucky sale, but we want to be deliberate with what we create. We want to be deliberate with the sales that we get. So that way, in the long term, I know approximately how much I'm going to be making every month with my books. And I know when I launch this book, assuming it's in a niche I'm already in, I've got a good idea, one, that it's already going to sell because I've already done all that research. So I'm targeted to a specific niche, but also because I know, because they know me, because they bought other books in there, I already know there's a really good chance that, X% of the people that buy that book are going to buy this one. And so it's a lot more reassuring when you go in, and a lot of this, like you said, does come with just time, just doing it. And that's one thing I'm hoping that this podcast does for people is speed up that time for you. You can either learn from your own mistakes or you can learn from others' mistakes, and you'll get done a lot quicker and a much better chance of getting the profits quicker if you learn from other people's mistakes. And Absolutely. So that's kind of what we're hoping to share with you. And so, it's good to know once you get these foundation down, mainly, like I said, the niche research, making sure that your book, not just the cover, but the interior, what it's about, everything, the keywords, the book description, all speaks to that niche. It's all about, with most algorithms, especially with Amazon, it really comes down to relevancy. So the more relevant and more unified you can make your entire product, the way better chances you have of getting not only initial sales, but continued sales.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like anything. And I think fiction writers know this. If you write in a certain genre, say you write romantic novels, you're known for that. But if you then suddenly bring out a non-fiction book about something, people are less likely to buy that because they know you for something else. Same as cookery writers. If you're a really great cook and you're writing books on cookery, you have your recipes, people get to know you, they keep buying your books. If you suddenly write something else, like a logbook or something, it's, people aren't going to, they're going to think, what's this? Well, I didn't know he did this, or, they're going to skip that. So it's really good to have a particular niche that you're known for. And if you're making low content books, or even non-fiction or fiction, you can brand your books and create different brands that you will then be known for. So it's always good to niche down really, really well. I mean, almost the smaller the niche, the better, in my opinion. So I think there's a lot to be said for that as well. So that's one thing to consider, as well as the cover and all the other stuff and the research. But it's definitely something, as we said, it comes with time. And, and like you said, we have made lots of mistakes. So hopefully you can learn from from the mistakes we've made. We're happy to talk about them and about all the things that I'm happy to talk about, all the things that I've done wrong, because I think that I learned a lot from that, and hopefully then other people can as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we can do a whole episode on the mistakes we've made.
That would be a funny one.
Yeah. Okay, so getting back to what you were saying, because some people will be like, but I don't want to just be in one niche, and I'm the same way. I mean, I write children's books, I write young adult novels, I've got nonfiction, I've got no content, low content. We're not talking about you as a creator, we're talking about you as the name that it's being sold under. So you can create whatever you want to create, be in different niches if you want. But as far as your author name, your pen name, it should be consistent. So you want to make sure that, everything that, pen name one does, it's all around that same topic. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same thing, like if you do line journals or you do, tracking journals, like if you do cookbooks, you start putting out cookbooks, you can do things within that niche that are not necessarily a cookbook. Maybe you can do a like a line journal cookbook, so people can write their own recipes and things like that, like a legacy thing. You can do puzzle books around cooking, things like that, but still kind of stay within your lane, so that way when people see your pen name, they know that this has to do with cooking. This has to do with what I'm interested in. Another thing we haven't touched on, but I think that it's something we have to bring up when it comes to sales, is running ads. Unfortunately, the days of publishing and praying, where you just publish it and just pray that you get sales, those days are kind of in the past. Is it possible to get sales without running ads? Absolutely. But if you want to ramp up your chances of getting sales and ramp up your chances of getting more sales, then you really do want to look into running at least Amazon ads or ads on whatever platform your book happens to be sold on.
Totally agree. I mean, for me, it was a game changer. Once I learned how to run ads effectively and promoting my books, and all that is so important. And like you said, you can make sales without that, but it just takes it to another level. So I would say, you can start off without all that and learn about it slowly. And, once you know enough about it, then start running ads. But it really makes a big difference. So yes, your book might not sell, but it might sell if you run an ad or if you promote it in some other way. And you can promote your books in different ways. There's social media, there's all sorts of things. You can build an email list. There's a lot of things you can do to promote it, which is not running ads.
Right.
And again, then that would be author name or pen name specific for each thing. So yeah, that's a big one actually. And I think I agree with you that it's very difficult nowadays to make decent sales without running ads. It's not what it used to be.
No, so, it's not.
Yeah.
But I would say that should be one of your last steps. The first and foremost, in my opinion, is your research, because you want to make sure you don't want to waste your time on something that isn't going to sell. So you want to spend your time both in research and in creating it, knowing that there's an audience there, and not just an audience meaning or not just that there's no competition, because there's plenty of niches that have no competition because nobody's looking for the book. But don't see low competition and think that means no one's looking for that book. So it really comes down to, for me, a combination of the competition. So like if you're on Amazon, you can search up a niche and look and see what your competition score. It'll say, one of 50,000, one of 5,000, one of 500, whatever. But also look at the books that are there and look at their BSR, their bestseller rank, and see what is ranked. That will tell you whether or not people are actually buying those books. So it really comes down to, on finding a niche that there's not a lot of competition, but there are people wanting that book. There are people buying that book. And I think that's probably the number one place to start, is to drill down that niche, and try to be as specific as you can. You may not necessarily get, tens of thousands of sales, but the sales that you do get will be more quality, which means you can probably bump up your price after a while, after you start getting reviews. But also, those people, because they're hungry for that niche, those will be your loyal customers. Those are the ones that you can guarantee that this book I'm about ready to publish, I know that I'm going to get at least 10 sales my first day, or whatever, or 100 sales, depending on how big and hungry that niche is. And so it's really comes down to that, I think.
I think that is the ideal situation, to find a niche where there's a lot of demand but not much competition. That obviously, is the unicorn we're all looking for, really.
Right.
But I would also say, I don't know if you agree with this, but I don't shy away from niches with competition, because I think that as long as I can add something different to that, or make it better than the books that are already out there, I sometimes quite like to publish in a niche that has a lot of competition, as long as I know that I can stand out in that niche. If I don't know much about it, then I don't attempt to do that. But I've had it happening so many times that I've made a book and I've done my research, and I thought, there's a lot of competition here. There's so many books on this subject, so many. And then I think, well, but I really want to make this book because I've got an idea about it, how to make it slightly different. And then I do it and it works, so I think to myself sometimes, thank God I didn't look at something with low competition, because it actually worked. But I think from doing your research when that's possible and when it's not, because there are situations where it's just so saturated, where it's difficult to make something different. But if you can see a way of making your book different, or giving it a different angle, whatever you need to do,
right,
it's still possible to make books for competitive niches, definitely. So I don't want anyone to dismiss a niche just because it's got a lot of competition. You need to dig a little bit deeper and see what else you can bring to the table that hasn't already been done, So I don't know how you feel about that, because I know some people won't touch niches that have high competition. But
I think it really depends on what you consider high competition. And don't get me wrong. I'm in niches and where my book sells, and there are thousands of competitors. Especially when someone is first starting out, I definitely would not suggest them being in something that's got like 50,000 competitors, because that's just my goal. It's not that I don't think that it can be beaten, that you can't create something, put it in there. But what I want to do is I don't want to deter people. I don't want people to jump into a niche like that's that is that competitive, and then not get sales and be like, okay, and then just give up. You can still, it's not too late to make money self-publishing books in 2023. It's not. And so, if you find a niche, if you do your research, I think that's what it really comes down to. If you've done your research and you're comfortable creating a product, and look at the other ones in there, like you said, and click on the look inside features, see what the interiors look like, because it's not just about the cover. The cover is the first thing they see, but it's not the only thing they see. And so if you can look at it and say honestly to yourself, I can do better than that. I can do different. I can create, add something in there that makes it different, that makes it unique, that people are going to be interested in, because you can make it unique and no one cares, then yeah, absolutely go for it. My goal again is just to the less competition, the better your chances of seeing those early sales. And that's what really kind of keeps people interested. If you go in knowing that, after what, Nuri and I have discussed, that, okay, this competition is 10,000. So it's pretty competitive. and you already know, so I might not get sales, or I might have to run more ads or whatever, and you already know that, dude, go for it. If you can add to it. But I think that's really what it comes down to is just go in with realistic expectations, I guess is the best way to put it. Knowing that the more competitive it is, the harder it's going to be for you to get those early sales. And also, again, super important is to look at what the BSR is. How frequently are these books selling? If they're, the bestseller in there is, in the millions, then they're not really selling that much, and so you really want to kind of balance that out. And again, as long as you go in knowing and have realistic expectations, then yeah, I say go for it. I mean, if you see a niche that you think you can add something into, and it's got 10,000 competitors or 20,000 competitors, go for it. Kind of leave your ego at the door and know that it's going to be kind of an uphill fight. And I mean, and when you run ads, you don't necessarily have to run ads forever. The first 30 to 60 days are usually the strongest for me. So that's usually when I really run ads. And that's when you get, when the algorithm will kind of really start looking at you, and it really has interest in the first books that have been launched recently.
Yeah.
And so if you can do that, then you may not have to run ads after that, or you may not have to spend as much money on ads after that, because your book is proven to have relevancy with its keywords and its cover and its description and everything else.
That's very true. And coming back to the beginning of this as well, I mean, especially with low content, I think if I had to sum up one thing from everything we've talked about, targeting your audience is the number one thing, I think, because I see a lot of people that write to me and they say, well, I've made this journal and it's not selling. Why is it not selling? And I look at it and I say, well, who's your target audience? It's for women. I said, yes, but what kind of women?
Right.
For women is too broad. You have to really go further than that. Oh, okay, well, for women between 20 and 30, that still isn't enough, because it has to be more niche. It has to be for a particular purpose. How are they going to use the book? What are they going to use it for? There are so many things where you can ask questions about that particular niche. And the more questions you answer, the better for your book sales later, because that means you've really targeted your audience for that. So I think if I had to pick one reason out of all of them, I think that would be mine, because I think that the more you speak to your audience, the better your chances, basically. But all of the things we mentioned are important.
Yeah.
They all work together anyway. So yeah, it could be any of those things.
I agree. In the writing world, we call that our customer avatar.
That's it.
Yeah. And it's like, if you have an envision of the perfect person that would love your book, absolutely love your book.
Yeah. And
then just ask yourself, okay, what do they look like? What are they? And not necessarily, oh, they've got brown hair, but what are they interested in? What age group are they in? What hobbies should they have? And then that's when you really start losing people. Is they're like, how would I know what hobbies?
Yes.
No, I mean, but that's the thing, is you want to think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's the drill down, niche that those people that you're going to find that customer avatar. And those are the people that are going to be super loyal, that are going to buy everything you put out, or virtually everything you put out, that are going to tell their friends about it, that are going to post pictures of it on their social media. Those are the ones that you're really aiming for.
That's right. And if it's really difficult, just do a mirror avatar, which is yourself. So,
right.
Just write the kind of books that you would enjoy, or that you would buy. That's, if you want to keep it simple, that's how you can do it as well. So, and I've got a few of those.
Yeah. And I think, it really does come down to the niche research, and because it comes out to, okay, I'm writing this for me, because I've done that before. The very first no content book I ever created was created based out of necessity.
Yeah.
And so it was actually for my daughter. And so I created it for her. So she was there for my customer avatar.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, so what was it for? And in this case, it was, for softball players, but not just any kind of softball player. It was for teenage softball players who do travel softball, because that's what the journal was for.
Yeah.
And so that's my niche, that's, where it's targeted the most. And so those are the people that, and again, I created it just for her, and she was using it at a tournament. Next thing you know, I've got, players on her team asking for it, players on teams that she competed against, asking for it. And so that's kind of how it really starts snowballing, is because you have that customer in mind. So just, I mean, the first thing that, when you're first starting out, I always suggest stick with stuff that stick with stuff that you love, and that's because you will know more about it, and you'll be able to add something in there that speaks to that audience.
And yours is a perfect example, because you actually made a tailor-made book for your daughter, and then people like her. So that's the perfect situation. Absolutely. You should make books that you would buy yourself, or books where you know a lot about, and that way you really know your stuff, and you can make books that people need. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, do the research, even if you already know, like in my example, I knew I was creating that book. I wasn't creating it to sell it originally, but what I would say is still do that niche research, so you can, getting back to what I said earlier, you can set realistic expectations. If you're creating it to try to sell it, knowing what that niche is, and looking and seeing what the competition is, and what, the bestseller ranks look like, will let you know what your chances of getting sales are. Again, I just don't want people to get deterred and think that, oh, you can't make money in this business just because, your books aren't selling. It really comes down to, are the people that your book is for buying, and is, and is your book filling a gap? Is it, if it just blends in behind another book, then it's not really filling in a gap. You know what I mean? It's just mocking somebody else, copying something else. And if you're just in comparison with something that's identical, the one that's got more reviews is going to win. I mean,
Exactly.
it's just human nature, because people want that social proof.
Yeah.
But if you make something that's different, that fills in a gap that exists, then even with very little to no reviews, you can still get sales.
Absolutely. And you can always find, just a little tip, if anyone thinks, well, how can I think of something that the other books don't have? Read their reviews,
I knew where you're going.
Yeah. Because when you read the reviews, you really find out what people are looking for in books,
Yeah.
They tell you straight, to the point, this book hasn't got any whatever, or this, or this book is amazing because so and so and so and so. And then you can tailor your book to what you've just heard about those other books that are your competitors.
Yeah.
And that's a good way to find out. That's how I do it anyway. So
look at the 5-star reviews, look at the 1, 2s, and 3s.
Yeah.
But 1, 2s, and 3s will tell you what to do better in your book.
Yeah.
And the 4s and 5s will tell you what you also want to do that they're doing right. You want to continue to do right as well. Exactly. And so it helps us improve on what's already out there. Yeah. As soon as you started, I knew where you were going with that one.
Yeah, that's because you know how it works.
Yeah.
So, yeah. You learn things like that in time, and sometimes when people say to me, I've made 3 books and they're not selling, I keep thinking to myself, I don't want to discourage this person, but 3 books isn't enough to learn about this business and to really know what you need to do. You have to make quite a few books to learn. And churning out one book after the other isn't going to teach you either. You have to be mindful of how you're creating your book. Don't keep creating the same books over and over, because that's not going to work. It's things like that you learn in time. And I know there are people out there that say, well, no, this business isn't working anymore. It might have worked for some, but it's not working for everyone. And it can work for everyone. It just really can. But you have to know what works for you. And what works for you is what you know, first of all. And secondly, how you relate to your target, how you pick your target audience. You know, are you clever in how you pick your target audience? Do you know what that target audience wants and needs and wants to buy? You know, so those are the things that if you know that, you can make sales, definitely. I would say that without a doubt. Yeah.
Yeah. Could not agree more. Yep. Well, this has been another great mastermind, Nuria. Once again, a huge thank you to all our followers and viewers who came to tag along. If you enjoyed today's mastermind, please consider following or subscribing to your podcast and maybe even leave us a review. We'd love to read them. Until next week, I'm Keith Wheeler.
And I'm Nuria Colby.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining the Mastermind today. Be sure to follow the podcast on your platform of choice and tell a friend who would enjoy it too. Your support is greatly appreciated. This has been the Masterminding Success Podcast.